a fellow colleague of mine from the Northern Virginia area, and a more important affiliation, a fellow Hamptonian from the Hampton University. He is joining us. Mr. Jonathan Wright will be joining us to talk about financial planning for young adults, how to get off to the right start. So I'm going to just turn it over to him. Jonathan, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself and share over the next hour or so with our youth and our parents. And you have sharing capabilities, and I'll let you take it from here. And welcome.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. I see Tara Punches in the chat. Another Hamptonian. Do we have any other Hamptonians in the building?
I think I saw.
Okay, here we go. We got another one, Kenya.
Oh, Kenya Underwood. All right, come on with it. I know there's got to be one more. Yes, yep. She's going to Hampton in the fall. Incoming freshman, next gen.
There we go. I love it. I love it.
Real HU. Say it.
I'm actually coming up on my 20th year, believe it or not. So this homecoming, we're about to turn up. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. Bringing the whole family with me. So my daughter, who's 10, she'll be coming. Elijah, who's on the call right now. Had to get him off the video game, but he's on this call, which is fantastic. Welcome. And my family's coming. They're playing A&T. So that's going to be good at homecoming. My dad went to A&T. My mom went to Bennett. So HBC, and my brother went to Coppin State. So all of us went to HBCU. So really excited to be here. I see some Aggie Prize in here. All right, I hear that. And so I'll go ahead and introduce myself. So my name is Jonathan Wright. I'm actually located here in Northern Virginia. And I am a financial advisor. And I'm also a managing partner. I created my own practice, started it literally 3 months ago. But I've been in the business for 15 years and been in finance ever since Hampton. Had opportunity to work on Wall Street. I was an investment banker, hated it, spent the night in my suit multiple nights. And I was like, this is not for me. Went down the corporate route and worked for a company called Northrop Grumman. I worked for a builder, Ryan Homes, in Charlotte, North Carolina, right during the crash of 2008. So that's why I was like the last speaker. I understood. I know real estate. I was in North Carolina and I was working for the builder. And I was during that time I got laid off because the market crashed. So that was a big learning experience for me that, you know, you never know where life's going to take you, but use it as a learning experience. And so for me, getting laid off was a learning experience because in my previous job, I made a lot of good friends and I didn't burn bridges. I left on good terms. So when I left on good terms, I was able to make a lot of good relationships who became senior executives in the government. And so being a senior executive in the government, they asked me to come and work and take a government job here in the Navy Yard in DC. I took that job, got a GS-13, came back, got my good government job, and got my executive MBA from Maryland College Park, Smith Business School. And during that time, I put together some platforms that allowed me to work for the Pentagon. So I worked for DOD. But when I returned back home, one of the things I did, rejoin my home church, First Mount Zion Baptist Church. And one of the first things that they asked me to do was to get involved and pay my tithes. So I paid my tithes and then I got involved, but there was no ministry. And one of the things I learned when I was in Charlotte was a ministry called the Money Smart Ministry. And so tying those biblical principles with the financial principles, I brought that to my home church. And I quickly learned that people were getting education, but they didn't know how to act on it. So education is fantastic. Being financially literate is fantastic. But if you don't put it in action, it really is not going to help you get to where you want to go. And I think the theme that we've heard in this call is about planning. And so what I'm here to talk about is the importance of financial planning and starting early. And there's no reason why you can't be financially successful if you plan and you start early. Most of my clients that are older, one of the main things that they talk about is, I wish I had known this when I was in my 20s and 30s. They all say the same exact thing. I wish I had known about this when I was 20 and 30. But then my question to them is, would you be receptive to hearing it when you were in your 20s and 30s, or would you be more concerned with playing video games and doing other things that are not really going to create value in your life? And so you are all on this call on a Sunday evening in the summer because you care about your future, or your parents care about your future enough to have you on this call. So we're going to bring down some, talk about some, people say my mom, yes. So yeah, so your mom cares about you, your parents. So that's fantastic. So now we're going to jump into some nuggets. And Chrissy, feel free to ask questions. Any other people people on the chat that want to ask questions, feel free to do so. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to dive in. Let's see, let's do this. And if you can give me the thumbs up, if you can actually see my screen. Let's see if I can see the people too. All right, Christy. Okay, I think I can see you now. You can see my screen?
Yes, I sure can.
All right, fantastic. All right, so why did I get into this space? One, because I started looking at the stats. And I don't want people to be a statistic. And so looking at these stats, 63% of Americans live check to check. No matter how much money they make, they're still living check to check. I know people making six figures living. 85% of people hate their job. So that is another thing. So why are you going to college, spending all this money, getting student debt, and you don't even like what you're doing? Find your passion, because if you find your passion, you'll never work another day in your life. Debt, 54% of households in America have credit card debt, and we're going to touch on that quite a bit. Approaching $1 billion in debt. Debt has a significant impact on your health, your family, and your future. Savings, 44% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency. So if an emergency happens, they have to go borrow money. They can't even get the car fixed because they got to go into debt because they don't have any savings to pay for these emergencies that are going to pop up. Retirement, 51% of Americans don't have anything saved for retirement. Insurance, 4 out of 10 households are uninsured or don't have enough insurance. And that's how you're creating a legacy for your family. It's tax-free, a way to transfer money. And it's one way. Did you hear about trust funds all the time? Trust fund babies. Well, you see, minorities don't typically have life insurance or have the right life insurance. So what do? They have GoFundMes. Have you ever seen those GoFundMes out there to fund a burial or funeral? That should never happen. And a lot of it is a lack of literacy. Only 6 out of 50 states require a standalone course in personal finance to graduate high school. And so you got to take these classes seriously if you had the opportunity to take them in your schools. Virginia is one of them that does have a financial literacy course. So you definitely want to take advantage of that because that's going to set you up nicely. So I want to talk a little bit real quickly about my firm. So who we are. We're empowering individuals, families, and business owners with the education and guidance to make sound financial decisions. Because ultimately, we want to help people make sound financial decisions for themselves because you're not going to have somebody there holding your hand for the rest of your life. And the other thing that we wanted to do is work as a gold standard. We call it a fiduciary. Fiduciary means that you're acting in the unbiased, in the best interest of your client, providing strategies to help them reach their goals. So integrity, competence, and excellence, the gold standard. Our vision, and I want to just point out one thing so you guys can get a perspective. This is our 10-year game plan. And so our 10-year game plan is we want to bridge the gap between ambitious professionals and their first million. We're graded on how many millionaires can we produce over the next 10 years. So that gets me excited because that means we're changing the landscape and closing the wealth gap. We want to help 2,500 families, business owners, and now we're getting into the athlete market space. So we're going to start working with athletes, especially for people, if you heard of the NIL deals in college, athletes can start making money now. on their likeness, their image and their likeness. And so now they need financial advisors and people to guide them, people that they trust to help them before they start making multi-millions. And so these athletes are making a ton of money, but not every athlete, as you can imagine, are going to make that kind of money and are able to make it to the pros. So we still want to be able to guide them as they enter the workforce. So we have a sports and entertainment division as well that we're developing and building, and we're looking for smart individuals to join our firm. So let's talk about a financial plan. What is a financial plan? A financial plan is, like, think of it this way. When you jump in a car and you don't know where you're going, what is the first thing you're going to do? Anybody? You put it in the chat, and Chris, if you can read it off to me if anybody answers. But one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to put in the GPS. You're going to put an address to your location, and the GPS is going to tell you step by step how to get there. And also, if there's traffic, they're going to give you alternative routes to go. So one of the things a financial plan is going to do is also give you a game plan to help you get to your destination. So a lot of times people don't know what the destination looks like. So then financial advisor, our goal is to help them kind of imagine what is it that you're trying to accomplish. And we do that through vision boards. So if you have not done a vision board is very important because we want our clients to visualize where their destination is and what is their why. If you don't have a why, you don't visualize where you're going, then it's hard to create a roadmap to help you get there because you don't know where you're going. So we want to help you do that. So you need to really think about, what is it that I want to accomplish from the standpoint of, where do I want to live? What neighborhoods do I want to live? What kind of house do I want to live? What kind of car do I want to drive? What kind of travel or trips do I want to go on? What do I want to do on the trips? Do I want to ride coach or do I want to ride first class? Do I want to be in a suite or do I want to be sharing a room with somebody? Like, think about that into those details and put it on paper and then visualize it through a vision board. Then we can determine what the cost is that it's going to cost to actually achieve those goals. And we're going to look at it from the lens of these 6 areas when we're building a plan. One is your cash flow. Without cash flow, you can't fund anything. That's what goes back to looking at what type of career you're gonna look at, what kind of job, what kind of income you can make, so you can determine what kind of cash flow you can expect to have, and does that align with your destination and what you want your life to look like in the future. Debt management. Debt is going to erode your wealth. So the more debt that you have, the more of your cash flow has to go to the debt to pay it down, and therefore you're paying somebody else and not paying yourself, which is a huge impact. Proper protection, because we know things are going to happen in life. So you want to protect yourself from worst case scenarios that could potentially happen to you. So what happens if you lose your job because you get hurt or you get sick? Do you have disability insurance? What happens if, you pass away? Do you have life insurance? What happens if the market drops? Do you have protection on your retirement accounts? A lot of people don't realize that you can get protection on different accounts that you have. And then you can also look at it from the standpoint, what happens when an emergency happens? Do you have an emergency fund? So all these things that we have to protect our clients against that are going to impact your money and your future from a financial perspective, we want to put in place. So all the teens and kids that are on the call, college students, you want to ask your parents, do you have life insurance? Having that topic and having that discussion is critical, because that's going to impact you and your pockets down the road. So emergency funds, critical. Building wealth, outpacing inflation. Inflation is ridiculous right now. If you go to the stores, the cost of goods and services are eating away at your money. So therefore, you have to make more money. And one of the ways you can outpace inflation is by investing in investments that outpace the inflation rate, which is right now stock market. Stock market, you can look at real estate. There's all different types of investments, but your goal is to outpace inflation so that you can continue to build wealth. And then preserving wealth. After you make all the money, you want to make sure you maintain it and keep it. And so there's strategies for that. And that's later in life, but you want to start thinking about your estate plan. And that's another question that you want to ask your parents. Do we have an estate plan in place? Do we have life insurance in place? And do we have an estate plan in place? Do we have trust? Do we have wills? Do we have power of health, power of attorney? Do we have those things in place? Because if not, again, that's going to impact our children. And so you got to have that discussion, because those are the things that we're not having those discussions in our families, and we're avoiding it, and it's impacting and widening the wealth gap. And that's a big issue for us. So any questions on anything I discussed on this topic before we kind of switch gears? And I want this to be an open dialogue. No questions? That was crystal clear. All right, that's good. I like it.
Wait, so quick question. So I'm finding out how important it is to do planning. You know, I've got things that I've got life insurance and things like that. So my dad, old school, I was like, Pops, man, do you have a will? He's like, no. And I was like, okay, well, I've got this, I got it from Groupon, just a quick will preparer. I think it's through one of those top 3 sites. But anyway, it's a start. And so, like I said, I've got life insurance, but I need to go over it and make sure everything is where it needs to be, because, you know, it's kind of a rush type of deal. So I think that's very important. And I think a lot of people miss out on that. And I probably will get with you at some later point to kind of firm mine up and see exactly where I am. But that's a great point. And a lot of people don't even know if parents even have that. Great point.
Man, I appreciate that. And yeah, absolutely. I'm here as a resource. And one of the things that we do as a firm is we do quarterly reviews for our clients, and at a minimum, annual reviews. It's just like going to the doctor. When you go get your annual physical, you go to find out and get a checkup, even if you're healthy, just to make sure that there's nothing lingering or something coming on the horizon that you might have missed. So that's what a professional is there to do. And most millionaires and multi-millionaires and billionaires, they all have financial planners and multiple financial planners in different areas. So you need to build your financial team so they're guiding you along the way. This is not a do-it-yourself type of project. This is your life, and the amount of study and effort that goes into it to do this type of business. There's so much information out there that's competing. You don't know what's right and what's wrong. So you need somebody who's licensed, who knows what the heck they're talking about, to go out there to be able to help and guide you, especially if this is something that's important to you as your future.
So at what point should you sit down with a professional to start planning that out?
As soon as possible, literally. Like if you're, I would say as early, like for example, my daughter's 10, like it's not like she's gonna sit down with a financial advisor. However, she's having those discussions about how money works. So you want to start that discussion with your parent. And then after the parent, bring your parents and get them involved to sit down with a financial professional to make sure that their finances are in a good place, but also that you're preparing your future as well. Because there's a lot of strategies that you need time for them to work. So time is your biggest asset. So the sooner you start, the sooner you can start getting into these strategies, the sooner your compound interest starts to take effect. And you could put less money in because you have more time, versus someone who has 5 to 10 years from retirement. They got to put a whole bunch of money in, which they might not have. And therefore, they're not going to retire the way that they envisioned. And I've seen a lot of people, they're really depressed about that. They're like, wow, I wish I had started sooner. So to answer your question, the earlier, the better. And work with somebody who's going to spend time to educate you, not just sell you on a product, but teach you the process so that you can make wise decisions throughout your life.
Thank you.
Fantastic questions. Any others? All right. So the last speaker, Douglas, I don't know if you go by Doug or Douglas, but you talked about credit, and credit is so critical to your finances. But before you can play the credit game, you must know the rules. So one of the things I want to show you is this video that I found that was very intriguing that talks about the current state of credit cards, which is impacting our credit scores, and how there's good debt and bad debt. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to play this video first for you. So let me know if you can see this. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Hopefully you can hear the volume. So let me know if you can't. So I'm gonna push play here. Of course, after this second commercial.
Credit card debt in the U.S. has reached a staggering record high, topping $1 trillion for the first time. This, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, as millions of cardholders carry balances month after month, year after year. CNBC's senior personal finance correspondent Sharon Epperson joins us now with strategies to help them pay it off. You got to pay it off. Their interest rates are so high.
You have to pay it off. But it's inflation and robust spending that's really helped push Americans' overall credit card balances past the $1 trillion mark in the second quarter. And that's according to New York Fed researchers. After a series of Fed rate hikes, interest rates, though, on credit cards have now risen to over 20% on average. And that's making it an extremely expensive way to borrow money for Americans using credit cards to cover basic household costs and many other expenses, too.
It's not just folks who absolutely have to use cards. It's folks who are doing it because they want to. Maybe they're investing in a small business or remodeling a house or whatever the reason might be. You have folks with a lot of money who are running up credit card debt.
And many of them are carrying that debt for months or even years. So here are a few strategies to help pay it off. First, call your card issuer and ask for a lower annual percentage rate. A LendingTree survey found about 3/4 of consumers who asked for a lower rate in the past year got one. Also, try to snag a 0% interest balance transfer card. These cards offer 12, 15, even 20 months with no interest on transfer balances. Now, once you get one, you got to be aggressive about paying off as much of the balance as you can during that introductory period. And if you have balances on multiple cards, figure out whether you are going to prioritize paying off the highest interest debt first or start with the smallest balance and work your way up to the largest balance. One strategy isn't necessarily better than the other. Experts say just make a plan, stick to it, and get it done.
Get it done is the most important
That's
thing.
the most important part.
A lot of consumers will have to make a lot of tough choices when student loan repayments are due again in the fall. So what are some tips, advice that you would give them?
Well, you know, there are tens of millions of people that are carrying debt year after year. And so that is a big concern now with student debt repayments starting in October. That's a big X factor. Will people be able to afford to make their credit card payments? So now is the time that financial advisors are saying, make sure that you find out what you owe. Call the loan servicer, which may be a different one than 3 years ago. Make sure you understand what you may owe if you do an income-driven repayment plan, and that may be a way to cut those monthly payments, maybe even in half. The problem for parents who have loans, those plus loans do not really fall under income-driven repayment plans. So that's going to be really tough. So budgeting and making these hard choices is what people are going to have to do.
But just like any debt also, Sharon, you have to consider the interest rate that you're paying, right?
Yes.
And so your credit card debt might be a much higher interest rate than your student loan debt, and you do have a grace period on your student loan debt.
You have 12 months before it hits your credit report, so that's very important, but I think that's a really important point. This is a variable rate that's going to go higher on credit cards. Fixed rate loans, you know, that's something that you, again, have to prioritize that perhaps higher interest debt and getting that paid off. But finding out if there's some way that you can try to budget those payments, putting that money now in a high yield savings account, that's the silver lining of these interest rate hikes, that we're getting more money on our savings in those high yield accounts. Try to do that so that you're prepared for October or whenever you can finally start to make those payments.
So I would love to hear your perspectives on that. Like anything resonated with you in that talk? There were so many nuggets in there. that, I just want to have a broad discussion about what you just heard.
My son and I were just discussing how making minimum payments on a credit card is just simply ridiculous.
Yeah, elaborate on that. Why do you say that? I agree with you.
Like I was explaining to him that if you brought let's say a refrigerator for $700 and you make a minimum payment of $25 a month, you end up spending maybe $1,200 for that same refrigerator in the long run.
Facts. It's a business. The credit card companies are in this not to help you out. They're in this to make money. And they're looking for people who are not going to be able to pay off their balances in a timely manner, meaning every month, so that they can start charging you those high interest rates. Did you know a lot of the credit card companies are public companies, meaning they're traded on the stock exchange, which means they have shareholders that they have to report to. And the shareholders are looking at the state of the economy and looking at the state of the consumer to see if they're spending money, if they're living outside of their means, so that they can charge those interests, which is more revenue for the companies. So think about that. You're contributing to someone else's pension. But you can also use credit cards to leverage yourself if you're smart and if you're paying it off in full every month or have a 0% credit card, things of that nature. There's or getting points. A lot of credit card companies are offering points, travel miles. We use it. I know we get $1,000 minimum every year back on stuff that we're going to spend anyway. And we just pay it off. But that means you have to have the cash flow to be able to do that and take advantage of it and have a budget and restraint. Because a lot of people think when they have a credit card, they have all this money. Yeah, you have money, but it's other people's money. And the money is going to cost you 15 to 25%, especially if you're not paying it off. And if you get into a point where it's a cycle and you continuously have all this debt on the books and you're not able to pay it down, that money can't be diverted to earning a rate of return that's going to build wealth for you. So it's actually eroding your wealth in real time. So you got to be very smart about it. But any other takeaways from that video that we just played?
I think just the overall thing is just living within your means. I mean, I understand like the cycle of getting into debt. Like both my parents like made those same mistakes. Like when they started out, they like, oh, I have a credit card, I have all this money. And so they were in severe credit card debt for a while. And then, but now, like this is years later, they're like, my dad is adamant. He pays it off immediately. As soon as he puts it on his card, pays it off. That's not going to carry over for the next month. So it's like just using the credit card, like all things responsibly, living within your means, making sure you have that money or you're going to be able to get that money to pay it off immediately. Like only times is emergencies, but like we kept talking about, make sure you have funds for emergencies so you don't fall into this trap.
Wow. I think we have a future financial advisor on the call. Well, fantastic. I mean, you hit all the points right there. That was great. A lot of good points there. There's another point they brought up about the double-edged sword of rates, inflation going up and rates going up. There's actually some positives with that, right? What else is tied to an interest rate that could benefit you? Think about it. Maybe for the parents. Parents, what do you think? With the interest rates going up, is that all bad? I'm gonna give you the answer.
If I may,
please.
If I may speak, I think while it's usually seen as bad, I think like if you have interest rates on your savings account, that might be a good thing because you're gaining more. And I think just good interest in general. I don't know if you talked about the difference between bad interest and good interest, but like good interest, like in the case of a savings account, are something where you could gain more off of interest. I think that's beneficial.
Fantastic. That's the point. So this site, I have this site up here for a reason. Am I sharing my screen still? Can you guys see this bank rate up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So here's a great resource for you to go in for credit cards, to go see what the best credit cards are out there that's paying 0%, things of that nature, based on your credit report. And it will kind of give you a good sense of the best credit cards for every single month. But what I really wanted to show you is the best savings accounts or high yield savings accounts. If you have all your money in a Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citi, whatever account that's paying 0.05% or 0.01%, then we need to talk because there's accounts paying significantly more for your money just sitting in a bank, and there's no reason why it should just be sitting there making no money and making the banks all the money. Look at it. Look at these interest rates: 5%, 4.75%, no minimums, no fees. Like, this is crazy. I haven't seen this. This is pretty impressive for you not to be at risk in the stock market and still making these kind of returns on your money that's safe and liquid. So this is pretty impressive, especially if you have accounts for your kids and things of that nature. I'm not making a recommendation. I'm just saying, do your research and see what's out here. And here's a great tool to do your research to find out what savings accounts are paying well. Now, you also want to look at the 5-star FDIC insured, right? 0%, no minimums, no fees. So you want to do your research for that and only work with banks that you've heard of or you're familiar with. Now, these are all virtual banks. So it's not going to be your brick and mortar bank. I think Capital One might have some pretty decent interest rates and they have a brick and mortar, but you got to get used to online banks. I'm like, this is a new world we're in. And, kind of old school way of thinking is, I got to go to the bank physically. I got to go in and go talk to the teller and build that relationship. Those days are done. It's all about money, right? So if you just link it to your Wells Fargo and you move the money over to your virtual bank, very respectable banks, and have your money sitting there making 4 or 5% for you. Now, these will fluctuate as the rates change, but this gives you a good sense of where you should go to go look and do some research. Any questions on that?
Yes.
Any questions? Are we good? All right. So why credit is important? Credit gives an individual the power to purchase something they may not have the money for now and pay it back over time. Point in case, mortgages. I mean, who got $1 million to go buy a house right now in cash? No, you're going to leverage a mortgage. But in order for you to get a good mortgage with good rates and good terms, you got to show that you're credit worthy. This is your credit report card. So everybody had a report card in school. We looked at your transcript before we admitted you into college. Transcripts are important when you're getting a job. Credit reports are also important when you're getting a job because they want to see how reliable you are. Like employers, landlords, before they rent a house to you, they want to say, am I going to get my money back? Or is this somebody who's going to tear my place up and not going to pay me? Doesn't mean that that's going to happen, but that is what they use as a litmus test to see where you are and how responsible you are. So you want to keep this credit report clean.
Hey, Jonathan.
Yep.
Hey, I'm sorry. I was asking, can you please post that in the chat, the link to the site that you were on before about the comparing the different rates and things of that nature?
I got you.
Thank you.
So you also want to look at what is a credit report. Let's look at this right quick. A credit report is a written account of your credit history with other institutions. It details when you establish credit with the creditor, the amount you borrowed, your payment history, and Doug, he mentioned that you got to pay on time, and account closures. So they want to look at that. How often should you review your report? At least annually, just like you're doing your annual checkup at your doctor and you're meeting with your financial advisor at least annually. You want to look at your credit report annually as well, but for multiple reasons. One is to protect your identity because there's a lot of thieves out there, people trying to take your identity, hack into accounts and things of that nature. So you want to make sure everything on there is accurate. Then you want to stay informed of what you have, because one of the things that lenders are going to look at is your debt to income ratio. So they're going to look at how much debt you have on the books versus how much debt you're allowed to have based on your credit limits. And they want to look at your income to that debt that you've extended to see what your debt to income ratio is. And if it's over a certain percentage, then they're going to say you're overextended, you got too much debt, and you're living above your means. So you want to keep those amounts low. And you want to look at this before you apply for a major loan to determine what your credit worthiness is. How do you access your credit report? You're going to go to annualcreditreport.com. It's free. You can get an annual credit report. And there's 3 credit bureaus that track and provide a credit report on you. So there's reporting that all of the companies, credit card companies, they'll report it every month to Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. So you want to make sure that it's clean on all 3, but you'll at least get one through the annualcreditreport.com. And if you're denied for credit, you can request your credit report as well. Any questions on that? Your credit score. So you got your credit, you got your report card, which tells you all the classes you took and your transcript. But then you want to look at your grades. So your grade in this regard is your credit score. The credit score is going to range from 300 to 850. And there's different models. We won't get into this on this call, but there's so many. People will pull your credit score, and you'll have different scores from different sources because they're using different models to calculate your score. So that's for another class. We have a whole class on credit reporting, and this is just like the high level. But just to keep it simple for you, 300 to 850 is your score. You want to be as high as possible on this range. Lenders are considering the 5 C's: your character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. So that's just giving you a little sense of what we're looking at from a credit scoring perspective. Why is it important? Again, lenders are going to use it. Employers are going to use it. And the higher the score, the lower the risk to the lender. And it's also going to directly impact your pockets, because the better your score, the lower your interest rate on cars, student loans, mortgages. And it can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars if you have a bad credit score, or prevent you from even buying a house, affording a car, or even being able to afford your student loans. So it's going to have a direct impact on your wealth. And those that have good credit will use credit to their advantage. We'll talk about good uses of credit and bad uses. So how do I check my credit score? So banks and credit card companies, they'll often pull your score, and then they can provide it to you as well. You can pay to have it through your credit monitoring agencies, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. Typically, they'll allow you to get one pull on your credit score for free. MyFICO.com, you can go there. CreditWise.com, I use them, that's free, but they use a different model. So keep in mind that might be different than what's reported with Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion, but it's pretty similar. And Credit Karma, I like them a lot because they'll tell you every month when it's changing. Oh, you did good. They'll send you an email. Fantastic. My score went up 10 points. And they'll allow you to see what drove that change. And then you can make some adjustments from there. Doug, what's going on, man? Tell me.
Oh, no, great. I use Credit Karma. I tell you what, it's the best. It's free. I tell you what, so much it tells you, hey, don't use your card anymore for this period of time. It tells you every single thing you need to do to maintain your credit score. So great resource there.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for that. They also have somewhere you can do some modeling. And I think CreditWise or Credit Karma, they might both do that, but you can do scenarios. And you can say, hey, if I pay off this debt, how would that likely impact my score? So you can make decisions on how much to put on a card. Should I pay it all the way off? Should I just pay a little bit? Because when I saw that one of my scores could improve 50 points if I just paid an additional $400 on the card, and I was thinking about paying it off, but I was like, oh, well, why am I going to pay it off when I just put $400 down? I'm not going to incur any interest, and my score is going to increase 50 points. So you could be strategic in terms of how you improve your score. I know we're running out of time, and I got a ton of information I could go through, but I'm gonna kind of get down to a little bit of myths and facts. So, myth, checking your credit report lowers your credit score. That is not true. Checking your own score does not impact your score. Using debit cards helps your credit score. False. Even if you use credit at the checkout, using a debit card is the same as using cash and does not affect your credit. So you need a credit card to start showing credit on your credit report, because that's what's going to be reported on your credit report, not your debit cards. Reasons to use debt: leverage, purchasing assets that are going to appreciate over time. So great tool. If you can use it properly, you can build significant wealth if you use debt properly. Appreciating assets, anything that's going to create value. Anything that does not create value, you're using a credit card and you're not paying it off, you're losing money. So we talked a little bit about this, but other good uses of debt, we talked about real estate, appreciating assets like artwork, things of that nature. Investing in education, only if you're going to use that education to generate some revenue stream in the future. You can have a ton of student loan debt and you're not doing anything in the field that you studied for. That was a bad investment. Tell you that right now, because again, schools is a business. So they're there to attract you to take your dollars, but hopefully you use it to your benefit to generate more dollars that will compound over time. Using debt to start a business, another good thing. Bad is credit cards, and depreciating assets. Hope that gets the point for us. Choosing the right credit card, look for the lowest interest rate possible. Choose cards with no fees or lowest fees possible. Cash back, travel points, other perks. Explore balance transfer options to avoid paying interest. We never pay interest on credit cards. Always have a 0% card, but again, that requires you to have good credit report and a great score to be able to be eligible for those type of cards. And you'll see that on that bankrate.com that I just provided. They'll say, all right, what's your credit score? Are you an excellent credit score? Are you good? Are you fair? Are you poor? And then it's going to recommend the cards, and you're going to see a major difference in the credit rate, in the ratings, the rate that you're going to pay on those cards and the perks, and how long the 0% interest lasts. So the better that's why they say the rich get richer. You know, that's what happens. They have all the perks and they get a lot of things that most of us others don't, that don't take care of their finances or have a financial planner guiding them through this process. Ways to manage debt. So pay yourself first. Start saving. Don't put all your money towards debt, because what happens when emergency happens? You're going back into debt. And that can be very, your confidence can be decreased significantly under those circumstances. Because like, man, I spent all this time paying down my debt. Now an emergency happened. I put all of it towards the debt. I have no savings. Now I'm going back into debt. Cut spending, stop borrowing. Cut yourself off. Do yourself a favor. It's going to be painful, but it's like ripping Band-Aid. Rip it off fast. Later, you'll be enjoying, well, you guys are not old enough, but a mocktail on the beach somewhere. Pay more than the minimum payment. Somebody mentioned that, one of the parents. Absolutely. Pay as much as you can down while also paying yourself as a balancing act. Consider restructuring your debt, moving to a 0% card. Consolidate multiple credit cards to one card with a lower rate or 0% interest. Call the credit card company and ask for a lower rate. I've seen that. I've seen when I call and say, hey, I paid all my payments on time. I'm a good customer. Can you lower my rate? They're like, look, yeah, okay, well, I think we can do that. Or if you had an interest charge and be like, hey, can you take the interest charge off? I've seen them where they just take it off. And they're like, hey, you've been they'll allow you to get away with that 1 or 2 times. But after that, then you make sure you pay off your balance in full or get a 0% card. Cut up your cards, but do not close them. You close your card, your score is going to go down because it's based on your history. The longer the history is, the better your score. So you want to keep that history long, keep the cards open, but just don't use them. And if you have temptation, cut them up. And then stop credit card solicitations that come to the house. You can call the number, opt out, And so you're not even tempted by all these credit card offers just coming in the mail. There's something in I've called before for interest rate reduction. They will discontinue your card at times or reduce credit availability due to non-usage. Yes. So if you're not using your card, that can happen in some cases. And so you want to be mindful of that and maybe just charge it $5 or $10, pay it off. Just keep it active. If you have a credit card company, they will close the account because it's not active. So be mindful of that, because that can mess you up if the history on it is very long and you haven't used it. Charge 10, $15, go get a cup of coffee, pay it off, and then that should refresh it for another couple months. I learned it happened to me during Kirk. Yep, exactly. What happened? All right, that's all I have for you. Because after this, I'm going out on the grill. And we're about to eat some good food. I got some steaks waiting for me. So I'll pause there for any questions.
Jonathan, I have a question, and you might have covered it, but I want to get you to just retouch on it. In terms of our school students or current college students and credit cards, how should they handle credit cards right now? Should they be an authorized user on one of their parents? What do you advise for young adults who are, in school in terms of starting to build their credit and what they might want to start with?
Yeah, they could do an authorized. I mean, they could do that, or just get a credit card with a small limit on it. $500 limit. Use it for gas and groceries, and it paid in full. Like, do not carry a balance. But that's a great way. If you're gonna spend money anyway, put on the credit card and pay it off, and then that way you start building your history early, which is gonna prepare you to buy a house sooner than later, because they're going to want to see a credit history. They're not just going to lend you hundreds of thousands of dollars with no credit history, but then you can also get a family member or somebody to co-sign, but then they're on the hook. So you got to start thinking about that. I see a couple people just added my daughter this week as authorized user of 500. Yep, exactly. Just start there. I think that's a good way. And then eventually give them their own card, so it's in their name, and you're helping them manage it, and you're tracking it. We track expenses in our household every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we're putting all of our expenditures in a spreadsheet by category. And in fact, my wife, she doesn't like that activity that we do, but it's very helpful. I've been doing it for the last decade. I know every expenditure that I've ever spent for the last 10 years, but I'm very anal in that regard, but that's kept me on track, because every 2 weeks you can make adjustments. If you wait till the end of the month, it's too late. You got money at the beginning of the month and no money at the end of the month. And you're like, I don't know what happened. And then the cycle continues. You got no savings, no investments. You got no life insurance, and you're in the same perpetual cycle, not creating generational wealth for your family.
Very good point. I mean, it sounds like a really good practice. It would give me a little bit of anxiety, but only because it's the discomfort with the accountability part of knowing where your money goes. But it sounds like, depending on what your financial goals are, that's going to tell you if you're on track to meeting them or not, too.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Can I just add this, that I use Intuit, and it actually pulls every single transaction that I have. So there's no way I can ignore it. It's right there in my face. So it's a very intuitive tool, because, of course, you got to allow it to track everything. You attach all your accounts, but it is secured. But I know exactly from day one of the month to the end of the month what I spent money on, what I didn't, what's due, and what's not. And it's all automatic.
Can you repeat the name of the tool you use again?
It's called Intuit. If you Google that, it is a free tool to use. It tracks. You would have to physically put in every account that you have, your credit cards, your payment, everything that you have. But once you do that, it will, to the penny, tell you where you are, and it will send you alerts. It will let you know when something's due, when it's past due, what you got coming in, what you got going out.
Thank you.
Let me put it in the chat. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jonathan? I think this was very informative for our high schoolers, college students, parents, others, all of us on here. I love these conversations. And I'll tell you, I met Jonathan a few years ago. He was doing some community work with our AKA chapter, and we actually go to the same church. But I've heard him speak in other places around some of these same topics for adults and for youth. And we also serve on the same nonprofit foundation, the Buffy Foundation Incorporated. And I'll tell you, he's a wealth of knowledge, another entrepreneur stepping out with his own business. So a lot of themes you're hearing over the last 2 days around some of the areas. We're talking about funding, having a plan, using your resources differently and your time. So any other questions for Jonathan before he puts his food on the grill?
And then if you want to reach out to me, Dr. Chrissy has my information. Set up a discovery meeting. We'll sit down, discuss your finances. And if you're interested, we'll build a financial plan for you, college savings plan. Very comprehensive view of where you are, but also let's understand where you're going and build a strategy to get there. So I'm happy to help, especially if it has to do with insurance, anything of that nature, because that's your legacy.
Can you put your site in the chat real quick too, if you haven't already? And I'll tell. So I think what I heard Jonathan say was that even parents and high school, middle school students, college students, it's not too early to reach out to him and get support for your financial planning and your financial investment profile, whether you're trying to save for college, beyond, you're in the middle of it, you need to get ahead of it. Reach out to him, get a consult, and he can get you pointed in the right direction.
And I'll put my Calendly in there as well. But yeah, I look forward to working with all of you, and we're having a lot of classes. So email us if you're interested in being in some of our future classes that we have coming up. And I'll put you on the distro for that. If you email us your contact information, your name, phone number, and we'll go from there.